one. Okay, in this video, in this video we'll learn about data contracts, and we will discuss about data contract and data members. What are data contracts and data members with an example. Let's understand data contracts and data member with an example. Let's implement an employee WCF service. This service should have two operations. The first operation should be get employee. If we give it an employee ID, it should query the database table, retrieve the respective employee, and return that employee back. The second operation should be save employee. If we give it an employee object, it should save that employee object to the database table. We also want a client application that is going to interact with this employee WCS service. The user interface of the client application should be this. I'm showing you the interface. Okay, this should be the user interface of the client application. If we enter an employee ID, and when we click the get employee button, this client application should send the employee ID to the WCF service, which is going to retrieve the employee from the database table, give that to the client application, and the client application should display those employees details in the user interface. If we enter a new employee details and then want to click the save employee button, means this button, the client application should hand that employee object to the WCF service, which is going to persist that employee object to the database table. So the first step here is to actually create the employee table. So let's flip to SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, let's move to the SQL Server Management Studio. Here is the database. I am creating the database quickly and execute. Now go to change the master to DBCS1. Okay, where is the DBCS1? Have we created on? Yeah, it is here. And then execute this. Use DBCS1. Execute it. So it is happening now. Okay. And this script will insert some sample data. Okay, this script will insert some sample data, but first we need to create table. So I am clicking here. Okay, table is created, and this script will script will insert some sample data into the table, and here I have. So let's first execute this sample data. Okay. Now here we have stored procedures, two stored procedure. Okay. As well as we get employee, and this stored procedure is going to get an employee ID. So this procedure is going to get an employee ID. So if we give it an ID, then the stored procedure as we get employee is going to retrieve an ID, name, gender, and date of birth from table employee, where ID equal to whatever we are going to pass to this stored procedure as we get employee. And the second stored procedure is SP save employee, and it has got ID, name, gender, and date of birth parameters. So we are going to pass values for those parameters, and this stored procedure is going simply to insert the values of those parameters into this table. Okay, into this table. TBL employee. So very simple stored procedure. All right. So first I need to execute the stored procedures first. Execute it. Execute it successfully and execute the create procedure. Okay, execute it. Okay, successfully executed. Now flip to Visual Studio and implement the employee WCF service. So let's create a new project. Okay, go to. So I'm opening up my Visual Studio 2022. So come right click mouse button and run as administrator. Click yes. So let's create a new project. Let's create a class library project. So we need to create a class library project. So here is the class library projects. Okay, it is taking time. Okay, now here is the class library. This is the class, our class library project, and name it as employee service. Okay, so I'm giving it a name employee service. Okay, then location would be desktops. Go to DataContract 1. I have this location on the desktop. I'm saving my this project in DataContract 1 at desktop. Okay, select folder, create, and let's rename this class1.cs file to employee.cs file. Okay, it is taking time to create our project. Wait for that. So now change the name of this class.cs file, that is the auto generated file, to employee, and I'm naming it as employee. Okay, and this will ask you are renaming a file, would you like to? You click yes. That should rename the name of the employee. Now we need to have 4 private fields and 4 public property. Basically, these properties are used to encapsulate ID, name, gender, and date of birth column from this table. TVL employee from this table. Okay, from this TVL employee. And in order to speed things up, if we execute this table, so we have got our sample data there. And in order to speed things up, I have already implemented the code for private fields and public properties. So let's copy that from the notepad and paste that into the employee class. So go to the okay, now from here you need to copy the coding for employee. Here are the 4 properties, private properties and public properties. So copy them and paste them into the employee class. So here we have got the 4 private fields and respective public properties, which are going to expose those private fields. So very simple employee class here. Now let's go ahead and add a WCF service to this employee service. Click add new item, search for WCF, So it is here. I name this as employee service. Let's call it employee service. Now within the employee service, so first we need to add this. Okay, now within the employee service.cs file, we want to have two operations. The first operation is going to be get employee, and this is get employee. Okay. Get employee, and this is going to take ID, that is the employee ID, and what should this do? First of all, pass int ID, and what should it return? It should return an employee object, so return type is going to be employee. Okay, and we want another operation contract, that is save employee. So copy this one, copy, and save employee. And to this method we are going to pass an employee object. Employee object, pass the employee object. Okay. Employee object. Let's call employee object as employee. employ, employee, and this employee method. Okay, and this and save employee is not going to return anything, so the returns type is going to be a void. So void return type should be void. Okay, now let's implement these two methods within the implementation file, which is an employee service.cs file. So to implement this interface, simply select these options, implement interface. So, and that should generate the method stuff for us. Let's get read out to work method. All right, get rid of this do work method. All right, right now here we are going to write some edu.net code to retrieve data from the database table TVL employee. And to speed things up, I have already implemented the code. I'm in the edu.net code for this get employee. So let's copy that from the notepad and paste that within get employee. So go to the, and here you need to go, okay, here you need to copy this stuff of code and paste it in here. Okay, and if you look at this code, it is straightforward edu.net code and we have some compilation error here. That is basically because we need to import some of the required edu.net namespaces. So let's go ahead and do that. We need system.data. So system.data, we need system.data using the system.data, and we need using system.data.sql client, and we need system.configuration. Okay, system.configuration. It's configurations. All right, now if you look at the implementation, it is pretty straightforward. And again, look at this here, configuration manager is showing a compilation error. Basically it says it does not exist. But if you notice, we have included that namespace system.configuration. That is basically because this class library project does not have a reference to system.configuration assembly. Let's go ahead and add that reference. So how to add the reference? Go to the reference folder, click at here, add reference. In the assembly, system configuration, system data, here it is. Okay, click this and OK, and that should get rid that compilation error. And if you look at this edu.net code, it is very straightforward. All right, so what are we doing here? Within this get employee method, we are creating an instance of employee object. So here we are creating an instance of employee object. Within, and then we are reading the connection string dbcs1. Okay, you know, from configuration file, app.config file. Now at the moment, if you look at this class library project, we have app.config file, but we are not going to include connection string within this app.config file. Let's delete that app.config file. So we need to delete that app.config file first. Why we are deleting this app.config file, I'm telling you. So that app, we will actually host this employee service in the console application, and that console application is going to have an app.config file, and within that app.config file we are going to have this connection strings dbcs1. Okay, so basically we are going to read the connection string dbcs1 from that application configuration file, and using that connection string dbcs1 we are building the SQL connections. This is the SQL connection. We are building the SQL connection object, and next we are binding we are building SQL command object, and notice the command name sp get employee, which is nothing but the name of the stored procedure. And since it is a stored procedure, we have to tell the command object, and we do that by specifying the command type property. Okay, and then this stored procedure expects an ID parameter. Okay, because we want to get an employee by ID, so here we are creating a SQL parameter object, This is the SQL parameter object. The name of the parameter is ID. Okay, and the value is nothing but the value that is going to be coming into this method parameter. Name ID means ID. Okay, and then finally we are adding the parameter object to the command object. Okay, this is the adding. We are added the okay. Opening the connection. Okay, where is it gone? Open the connections. Opening the connection, executing the command. Okay, and then we are retrieving the value that are retrieved. That's we retrieve from the database, and these are the values. Okay, and here and then assigning them to the properties of the employee object that we have created on this line. Employee new employee method, and then instance that was instance. So straightforward, and then finally we are returning that employee object back, this one. So straightforward get employee method there. Okay, and then similarly for this save employee method, if we give it an employee object, we should save that employee object to database table. Again, we need to write edu.net code to speed things up. I have already implemented that required edu.net code. So let's go ahead and copy the required code. Here is the code. So copy this. Okay. Yeah, and this code here. All right. So if you look at this edu.net code again, this is straightforward. Here we have a compilation error because we have not given any space here. Need to give space. So let's now again we are reading the connection dbcs1 from reading the connection string from the application configuration file, building the SQL connection. We are building this SQL connection, and then this SQL command. Look at the SQL command. This is the SQL command, sp save employee, and this stored procedure has got several parameters. We need to pass the ID, name, gender, and date of birth parameters, and to create those parameters, here we have the codes. We are creating SQL parameter object specifying the name. Okay, specifying the name and value, and look at where the value is coming from. The value is coming from the property of the employee object that is coming into the save employee. This is the employee functions. Okay, and we are adding the parameter object to the command. So that's for the ID, that's for the name, that's for the gender, and then date of birth. And then we are opening the connection, executing a query. All right, so We are done implementing our employee WCF service. The next step is to host this service, and we are going to make use of a console application to do that. So let's add a new project to the solutions. Here we have no errors, so go to the solutions, add a console applications, new project, and we need a console application. Okay. Okay, we will say console app, select this one, and next, and name it as employee service host. Okay, EMPLOYW service host, and keep the location same, employee service, and click create. And the first step is here to add an application configuration file. So, but first we build the solution. Because we are going to write the configuration using WCF, edit WCF configuration tool. So where is the edit configuration tool? Click here. Not on that, you click here. This is the edit WCF configuration. Okay, first of all, okay, you need to delete this one. This is the auto generated file, so I am deleting it. Okay, and add default configuration file, items new. Where's the configuration file? Application configuration file. Select the default name, add. Now we have to again build the solutions. So build is succeeded. Now to file, now go to open the added WCF configuration file, and here you need to create a new file, a new service. So you should so what is the service type is going to be? Click here, and service type is going to be present in here. Click enter. Now open the employee service folder, bin folder, debug folder. Here is the employee service DDL, and open it. That is the assembly. This is the type of service, employee service. So select this and open. So this is the service. Okay, so I am opening it up. Now go to next button. This is our server type. And what is the contract? Contract is nothing but an employee service.I employee service. That is the service contract that we are implementing. Click next. So HTTP basic binding basically. So let's select that second option, HTTP, and click next button. So keep it as it is. Basic web services interoperability. Next important thing is the address for the endpoint. Now here you can either specify fully qualified address or you can use a relative address and then specify a base address. So let's use a relative address now. So employee service is going to be the relative address, to reach the service. So employee service, EMPLOYESERVICE. Okay, employee service, spelling is correct, EMPLOYESERVICE. Click next. Now here we have the details that we have provided. Service type is employee service.employee service, and the contract is employee service.I employee service. We are going to use basic HTTP binding, and we are not going to customize the binding in any way. So binding configuration at the moment is default, which is an empty string, and then endpoint address, basically employee service, that is the relative address. So let's click finish. So at this point it has added service endpoint for us. So click at finish. Okay, so we need to specify base address as well because we are using a relative address. So to specify the base address, click on host, click go to host, and new. So we type http://localhost:/. So here we are going to type http://local/localhost:/. Let's have the metadata available at the port 8080. So that is the base address for metadata exchange, that is, and then click the OK button. Now since we have specified a HTTP based communication, so we don't need to add a second base address for this service endpoint. So we are not going to specify second base address. So for this employee service we have only one base address, http://localhost:/8080 for the metadata exchange. Okay, so we have the base address and we have specified service endpoint as well. And another important thing that we need to do is we need to enable behavior, service behaviors, basically to enable metadata exchange, so that client can generate proxy classes. And in order to do that, expand advanced folder, click expand advanced folder, go to service behavior, and click at the new service behavior. So I'm clicking it. So we want to create a new service behavior configuration. So add service metadata. Okay, so we need to have this service metadata and change this method named as max max behavior, and relate this method max behavior to this service. So behavior configuration max behavior. Now we need to enable what we need to enable HTTP get enabled. Here you go. I think this is it here. Yeah, we need to enable this HTTP get enabled false to true. Okay, so let's actually call, we have changed the new behavior max behavior. Okay, and then what we need to do now, so everything is done here. Come here and click close this. It will ask, do you want to save the changes? Click yes. So basically here within app.config file, within the system.service model, we have associated the behavior with this services, this behavior with this services. And the with this services using the behavior configuration attribute max behavior. And the name of the service is this one, means the name of service is stored as name employee service dot employee service, name of this employee dot employee service element or attribute in this service tag. And then here is the endpoint, that is the address, endpoint address employee service. This is the endpoint address employee service. The ABC of an and the contract employee service dot I employee service, the ABC of an endpoint specified. And then here we have a single base address http // localhost 8080 for metadata exchange. Alright, so with all these changes, we should be up and running the service. Before that, let's set this employee service host project as the startup project. One more thing is to be notice that we need to add the connection string in this stuff also, config file stuff. Where is the config file? Yeah, we need to copy this portion of code and go to application config file. Here you need to type it here like this. Okay, so alright, here is the database dbcs1, and dbcs1 is the name of the database, and this is the name of the my system computers. Okay, so you specify your own name of your system, because this is you can use the dot symbol also. Now save everything. Alright, now set up this project employee host folder as set as startup project. Okay. So within our program.cs file, first of all, to host a WCF service, we need to add a reference to two things. So first of all, we need to go here. We need to add a reference for two things. The first thing is the employee service itself. So let's go to and do that. So I'm going to first of all okay, here we need to system service model. Okay, system service model is the assembly model, is this assembly for us. So system service model, where is the system service model? It is here. So select it. This is a reference to system service model. Now add a reference to our employee service projects. So go to project, select it, okay, and within this program.cs file, we need to import system.service model. Okay, where is the program.cs file? We need to import using the system.service model. It is here. Namespace, and within the main method, let's create an instance of service host. Let's call the host equal new service host, and we need to specify the type of our service, and in order to do that, we use the type of keyword, and then name of our type is employee service, which is present in employee service namespace, and we are going to open the host. So go to the notepad and go to the program.cs file. Where is the program.cs file? It is here. Okay, copy this line, these codes, and paste it right here in the program.cs file, and also remove this internal words from this. So what we are doing here, we are creating an instance of service host, call it as host equal new service host, and we need to specify the type of our service, and in order to do that, we use the type of keyword, and then name of our type is employee service, which is present in employee service namespace, and we are going to open the host. Let's print the date time the host has started, and in order to do that, let's simply say host started at whatever is date and time that the host started, and in order to keep this alive, the console applications, let's use console.readline method. Alright, with these changes, let's go ahead and run this. Okay, save this, Control F5, So the host has started. The next step is to create the client application. So let's fire up another instance of Visual Studio, and then let's create a new project. And here we want to create an empty ASP.NET web application. So keep it running, go to Visual Studio and fire up another instance of Visual Studio. Okay, here it is. Run as administrator, click yes, and we want to create an empty ASP.NET web application. So create a new project, ASP.NET. Come on here. Okay, now here we need to click this template, ASP.NET web application.NET framework. Click it here, next, and call it client. So CLIENT client, and give the location and save this at the location where we will in this folder, client folder. Okay, select folder and create. And because we are creating a empty ASP.NET web application, so select this options, empty, and create. And first thing we need to do here is to add a reference to our WCS service. And if you look at the configuration of our WCS service, the base address for this service is this of the address. So go to the service. So here it is the app.config file. Copy this, http :/localhost 8080. So our client has created, and go to the reference folder, add service reference. So here we will type the http :localhost 8080. Click go. So this should generate the proxy class. Now let's go ahead and add a web form to this project. First of all, we need to give it a meaningful namespace. Let's call it employee service. Call it a employee service. Click OK. And now let's go ahead and add a web form to this project, and we need to design. So add a web form. New item. This is the web form. Keep it default. Web form 1.aspx. And we need to design web form in such a way that it looks like this. How it does look like? It should look like this. And to things speed up, I have already implemented the required HTML. So let's go ahead and copy the HTML and paste that into our web form. So go to the notepad. Here is the coding stuff. Copy this and paste it in our client HTML coding portion. And if I flip to the design mode, you can see the same design that we have on the slide. So go to this design, and we have a label control here, basically to display the status message. Okay, all right, now let's double click on this get employee button to generate the click event handler. Similarly, click event handler for save employee button. Alright, now here we need to create an instance of the proxy class, and if you remember, the namespace that we have used is employee service. So employee service dot employee service client. So let's create an instance of that, and then all we do is get employee. So what we need to do, again go to the notepad, and here the coding for button employee get button get employee. So copy this code and paste it here in the button get employee click event. So we are creating an instance of employee service dot employee service client. Let's create an instance of that, and then all we do is get employee. We invoke the get employee method, and to this method we need to pass ID. The ID is going to come from this particular text box. Where is the ID coming from? To this particular text box. Okay, and we need to convert that into an integer. All right, and if you look at this get employee method, what is it returning back? It is returning look at the installations. Look at this installations. It returning an employee object, that is employee object is present in employee service namespace. Okay, here you can see this employee name service namespace, and it is the employee object employee. So within the employee.service we have got this employee, the employee object back from the service. What we need to do, we need to display name, gender and date of birth properties within the respective text box control. And to spruce thing up, I have written that code as well. So let's copy that. This is the fields. Okay, so if you look at this code, it is again straightforward. We are saying text name, text box, text name, text box equal name, text name equals gender, name, gender, date of birth equals date of birth. Okay, date of birth, date of birth returns date time, so we need to convert that to a string. Basically we are converting that to a short date string, so that we don't get the time part of it if there is any. Okay, and finally within label control, which has got an ID label message, we are displaying this message employee retrieved. All right, this is now we need to implement save employee. Now again we need to create an instance of the proxy class. So what we go to the notepad and copy this code and paste it in the button save click event. So here is we create an instance of the proxy class employee service dot employee service client. So invoke save employee method, and this method expects an employee object to be passed. So we need to pass the employee object. So let's go ahead and construct our employee object, populate its properties with the values from the control on the user interface. And in order to do that, I have implemented the required code. So let's copy paste that right here. These are the value properties that with the values from the control user interface. So first let's create an employee object, and where the employee object is present within the employee service namespace, and let's call the instance employee. I'm talking about this line, okay? So create an employee object. This is the employee object, and this employee object is present within the employee service namespace. That's one. And let's call the instance employee. We have called the instance employee, and we should hand that employee object to save employee method. Okay. And finally, within the label control, we should display the message. So let's employee saved here. Okay. So employee saved here. So let's employee saved. Alright, with all these changes, let's go ahead, run the application, and we see if it works as expected. Alright, so now our service is already running, and we have reference to that service here. So run this client, control F5. So let's check whether it is working or not. So I will pass enter an employee as ID 1, okay, and we will click get employee button. So now I type 1 here, and look at this. So our get employee button is working well. And let's save a new employee. Let's say 4, ID as 4, name Todd. I give the name as Todd. It is male, and date of birth 82. And if I click the save employee button, let's check what. So employee is saved. Now go back to the database table. Let's check whether we have got Todd or not. So select this. So here we got Todd, male, and date of birth is so. Alright, the service, the client application, everything is working as expected. So now the point is, where does this WCF data contract and data member comes? Okay. So point is, where does this WCF data contract and data members comes into play? Now first of all, in order to understand them, first let's understand what we mean by serialization with respect to WCF So with respect to WCF, so with the respect to WCF, serialization is the process of converting a .NET object into an XML representation. Okay, so basically the employee object, okay, needs to be converted into an XML format. Okay, and that process is known as serialization, and the reverse process, that is reconstructing the same object from XML back into .NET employee object, is called as deserialization. And in order to do serialization, the default in WCF is data contract serializer. Okay, data contract serializer. So there is a component called contract serializer, which will serialize the data for us into XML and into .NET representation. So let's go ahead and look at how this data contract serialization is going to serialize. You know, the object like employee, student, employee, student. So let's go ahead and look at how this data contract serializer is going to serialize, you know, the object like employee, student, customer, etc. Okay, now if you look at the employee class, actually I have to show you this one. So where is this? Okay, this is the slide which you need to see. So within okay, now if you look at the employee class within our employee service, look at this at the moment. So go to the Visual Studio employee service and the employee class. So we have not done anything special in order to have this employee class serialized. Now for a complex type like customer, employee, student to be serialized, that complex type can either be decorated with serializable attribute or data contract attribute. But if you look at our employee class, is not decorated with any of them, but still, you know, everything is working as expected. So is that possible? That basically because with the .NET go to yeah, that basically because with the .NET 3.5 service pack 1 and above, we don't have to explicitly use data contract or DataMember attribute. The data contract serializer, that is the component which does serialization for us in WCF, you know, is going to automatically serialize all public properties of the complex type, and it will do that in an alphabetical order, and by default private field and properties are not serialized. So if you look at our employee class, it does got 4 property field and 4 public properties. So here is the class. Okay, the employee class, it does got 4 property field and 4 public properties. By default, the data contract serializer is going to serialize all these public properties, that is ID, name, gender, and date of birth. Okay, now in order to prove that, let's actually get to the WSDL document that the service generate. Okay, and to get to the WSDL document, we give it the base address of the service, and the base address is basically http://localhost:8008. So let's get to, so copy this URL, http 808. Okay, and go to the browser, Google Chrome. Okay, we are going to Google Chrome and type it here, click enter. Now click this http colon localhost 8080 WSDL. And click on this, and basically here on this file we don't see the employee object, but then if you look at this line right here, we have got something called data contract. We are going to see this one, namespace schema data contract. Okay, we will come to data contract in just a bit, but this is the schema location for the employee object. So let's copy the URL. Means we have to copy this schema location. Copy. So copy whole line because it is not getting copy our required locations. Paste it here, and we need only this one. Enter. Oh, what is that? What we have done wrong here? We have to copy this one here. Schema location. Yeah? We made a mistake here. Yeah. And look at this, we have got the type of employee. This is the complex type employee, name employee. And look at the property names, date of birth, gender, ID, name, and notice the order in which they are present. They are present in alphabetical order. Okay, so the data contract serializer has serialized the employee object into its XML representations. Okay, so by default, if you don't create the employee class, the data contract decorate. If you don't decorate, so by default, if you don't decorate the employee class, the data contract serializer is going to serialize all the public properties of that class in an alphabetical order into its XML representation. Alright, if we decorate a complex type with serializable attribute, remember, to serialize a complex type, there are two ways. You can either where is this? You can either decorate it with serializable attribute or data contract attribute. Okay. Now the preferred way is to actually decorate it with data contract attribute. In a bit, we will discuss the reason why. I think I have to show this one. Okay. If we decorate it with the serializable attribute, then the data contract serializer serializes all field, and with the serializable attribute, we will not have any explicit control on what field we want to include and exclude from serialized data. Let's actually look at that in action. Now, if you look at this serialized data, look at this. The public property are serialized for us by default, all the public properties. But then let's go ahead and decorate this employee class. If you watch this, by default all the public properties, the public property are serialized for us by default. But then let's go ahead and decorate this employee class with serializable attribute. And by the way, the serializable attribute, I mean data contract attribute, is present in system.runtime.serialization namespace. So go to here and type here serializable, serializable. Okay. And by the way, the serializable attribute, I mean the data contract attribute, is present in system.runtime serialization namespace. So let's go ahead and include the serializable attribute. And let's close the service. We are not here bring that system.runtime serialization here because we are using serializable attribute only. So close the service. Okay. And rerun it again. So save first and rerun this service. Now let's refresh the page and look the instead of so go to your Google Chrome and here you are watching this previous date of birth, gender and ID. So if I refresh this page, then what you will see, serializing the public properties. When we have decorated the complex type, that is our employee class, with serializable attribute as serialize all the private property. So because we have decorated our class, service class, with the serializable attribute, then if I refresh this page, then it will serialize all the private fields. So refresh it. Okay, this is the private field has been serialized. And now let's say, for example, for some reason we don't want date of birth to be returned to the client. We don't want that to be serialized. If you want to achieve that, if you want to exclude this date of birth from serialized data, and if you are using serializable attribute, you can't really do anything about it at the moment. With the default behavior, you don't have any explicit control on which field is to include and exclude from the serialized data. When you use serializable attribute, on the other hand, when we use data contract attribute, so basically this data contract attribute is present in system.runtime serialization serializable namespace. So let's go ahead and bring that in. So what you need to do, using system.runtime serialization, it is here. Okay, namespace. So when we decorate this employee class with data contract attribute, so change this to as data contract. Okay, data contract attribute. Then we will have explicit control on which properties or fields that we want to include and exclude from this serialized data. And the way we achieve that is by decorating these fields and properties with DataMember attribute. So for example, I want this public property, all of the public properties to be included in serialization. Then decorate each of them with DataMember attribute. Okay, for now let's decorate ID and name with DataMember attribute. ID and name with DataMember attribute. So if I put here member attribute, ID and name. Data member attribute. Okay, I have decorated ID and name with the data member attributes. Let's close host that is already running, rerun it. So first of all, close the service host, click save and rerun it, control F5 and go back to your browser. Look at here, it is the private fields, and now we need to show what happened if we refresh this. So name, ID and name is the data member. We have so included in the serialized data. Okay, we have decorated only ID and name properties. They are only included in the serialized data. So now with data contract and data member attribute, we have got an explicit control on what properties and fields as well. So for example, if I include the data member attribute on this field, private date, time, date of birth, in this field, then what happens? We also serialize it. So irrespective of whether it is a private field or a public property, as long as you can apply it, data member attribute, it is to be serialized. So if I put data member on this field, date of birth, data member. So I close this service again and save this and control F5 and now go to the browser. If I refresh this, then the date of birth private field is also serialized. Okay. So it is also irrespective of whether it is a private field or a public property, as long as you apply data member attribute, it is to be serialized. Okay. It is to be serialized, and if you want to exclude them from serialized data, don't apply that attribute. Means don't apply that data member attributes. Okay, it is as simple as that. So using data contract and data member attribute, you have got lots of flexibility on what to include and not to include from serialized data. So if we decorate a complex type with data contract attribute, the data contract serializer serializes the field as well as the property that are marked with data member attribute. The fields that are not marked with data member attribute are excluded from serialization. The data member attribute can be applied either on the private field or public properties, but I prefer applying them to the public property. That basically because if you look at our public properties, okay, if you look at our public properties, they have got meaning full name without an underscore. Okay, here you can see public properties. Usually the convention is private fields will have an underscore in them. So let's go ahead and apply this data contract attribute data member to all members all of the public properties, I mean. So now all public properties should be serialized. Okay, so I am applying DataMember. So copy this, apply to all public property, apply, and then we will do again, close this service and rerun it. Control F5. So service is running. Now go back to your browser. Where is the browser? So here you see only 3 item has been serialized. So if I refresh it, so all public properties have been serialized: date of birth, genders, all these things. Okay, obviously to a type, serialize a type, we have 2 ways. You can either decorate. Obviously to serialize a type, we have 2 ways. You can either decorate that serialization, you can decorate. Okay, I'm showing you the presentation slide. You can decorate serializable attribute or a data contract attribute. There are other ways as well. We will discuss them in later video session, but keep in mind in WCF, the preferred and the most common way of serialization is to mark the type with data contract attribute and mark each member that need to be serialized with DataMember attributes. And that is basically because we have several advantages using data contract and DataMember attributes. So here is the presentations. Okay. First of all, using data contract attribute, you can define an XML namespace for your data. At the moment, actually, let's close this. Let's rerun our employee. We have done that. So as you can see here, we have showed you the refresher page. Here we are again, the public property serialized in alphabetical order, and if you look at ID is somewhere in middle. Name is in end. It does not really make sense to have IDs somewhere in the middle. I expect that to be the first item to be serialized, and then name, and then maybe date of birth, then gender. Now is it possible to control the order of these properties in which they are serialized? Absolutely, that is the advantage of using DataMember attribute. Okay, first let's look at this using data contract attribute. We can define an XML namespace for our data. So if you look at the target namespace here, it is using the default URL. So if you look at the target namespace, this one, it is showing which is schema dot data contract and something else. Data contract, okay, schema, this one. Now you can specify, something like your domain name / and you can give it like employee or whatever you want. Okay, basically you can give it your own unique name space where you know that serialized data will live in, and in order to do that you specify namespace property on the data contract attribute. So go back to your employee class, and here what you need to do. So data contract is applied on the type itself, and it has got namespace property. And then, for example, here let's say http:/. So here I will type namespace. Okay. Namespace is equal to http:// Surinder Kumar HURENDER tech.com /2023/09/09 and /employee. Basically because giving it month, date and year allows you actually to version that. We will discuss versioning in later video session, but with this change, let's actually run this and let's close the service running and rerun it again and go back to your browser. Watch the previous serialized data and refresh it. So you are showing the target namespace as Surinder.com 2023 G09 employee. Here you can see. Okay, this is the namespace applied on the data contract attribute. And notice the target namespace at the moment default one, but it has changed after refreshing the page. So we got the namespace that we have given it. Alright, now the other advantage is you can specify name, order, and whether if a property or field is required. Or not. Okay, and we do that using DataMember attribute. So if we go to the employee service, so these are the member that we want to include in serialization, and this DataMember attribute has got here several parameters. So name, for example, so let's say for some reason we want the ID to be serialized with capital letter as ID. That is the case, use name property, and you can also use order property. At the moment, if you notice, the order is alphabetical, but I want ID as number 1. So what you need to do, go here, name, ID, comma order is equal to 1. So, but name as order 1, ID at order 1, name as number 2, means copy this. Name number 2, ID. Oh, first of all, we need to remove this. I made a mistakes. Now here we write name is equal to capital ID, comma, okay, and then it should be order 1. Name should be order 2. Gender at the order 3. And date of birth at 4. Okay. So let's close our host and rerun it once again. So close this one and rerun this again. Control F5. And go to your previous serialized data and refresh it. You can watch this date of birth and now we will get ID at the first position if we refresh this page. So look at here. The ID name is in capital letter now, and look at the order, it has changed. Okay, so that is the benefit of using DataContract and DataMember. It has got lots of flexibility there, and it will also allow you to serialize private fields and properties as well. If you want to include them in serialization, simply apply the DataMember attribute. Okay, so service contract, operation contract, data contract, 3 very important things to keep in mind as far as WCF is concerned. So if you want to make something WCF service, you decorate that with service contract attribute. If you want to expose method to the client, then you decorate those methods with the operation contract attribute. And then within a type, if you want to have certain property and fields to be serialized, you decorate that type with decorate contract attribute. And then fields and properties that you want to include and exclude in serialization, you either include or exclude DataMember attribute from those respective fields and properties. Alright, and keep in mind the preferred way of serialization in WCF is to use DataContract serializer and to decorate the type with DataContract and members with DataMembers attribute. That's it for today. Thank you for listening and have a great day.